people with fatigue syndromes, not the least, have been dismissed, that it's not real, it's just in the head. From our side, like from researchers and clinicians, etc., we're guilty of presenting models that are not helpful enough.
My guest today once injected himself with a bacterial fragment just to feel his own brain make him feel unwell. That's Mats Lekander, professor of psychoneuroimmunology at Stockholm University and of health psychology at Karolinska Institutet in Stockholm, Sweden. For decades, he's studied how the immune system talks to the brain and causes the malaise and fatigue and low mood that we feel when we're unwell, or when the brain simply believes that we are. He's the author of The Inflamed Feeling, and today he's going to explain the science behind the symptoms that far too many of us have been told are all in our heads. Mats, so incredible to have you here. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Something I am so excited to talk about. This blew my mind when I read about you doing this. I've never heard anything like this before. And I'm not sure if I'll explain this correctly, but this was my understanding is that you injected yourself purposely with some sort of bacterium or partial bacterium, like something that wouldn't cause harm, but just to observe that sickness response in your own body to see what happens to a perceived threat, not an actual threat, which is so much of what we talk about here. But I've never heard of anything like this before. So could you tell us, am I understanding this correctly? Is this what
You,
happened?
you do, and you actually say that it's a perceived threat, and I never thought of it in that way because I thought of it as a like perception of the white blood cells that there is an infection. But as you say it, it's actually a perceived threat. It's not a real threat. That's the core of the model that we use. So I had this interest in immune to brain communication and the role of behavior. That was a core interest. And I had learned that people using like a model to study sepsis originally was also used to study impact on the brain by the immune system. And what these people did was that they injected not a bacterium because that or bacteria because that would cause an infection, right? They used only a signal, a part of the molecule, a part of the cell. So they had a molecule from the wall of the bacterium, and only that part could be recognized by the body, the white blood cells, as a sign of bacteria. So it was like an ID card or something like that. Oh, the white blood cell would go, this is a bacterial infection coming into the body. So these molecules signal to the white blood cells that an infection is coming. Okay, so they get activated in the same way, exactly the same way as if we had a real infection. So only these molecules could be injected into people and healthy people, and then they would feel that they were sick after an hour or something. So my dream was to use this to study the impact on the brain and behavior by using neuroimaging, like fMRI or similar techniques. And when we had a grant to start an Orchestra Center of Integrative Medicine, now it's Integrative Health, at Karolinska Institutet in Stockholm, where I work, I wrote down this dream. This is what I really would like to do. We got this big center grant, and I started to chase money to start to establish this model in Stockholm, and we did. So, but first we needed to test on ourselves, actually. How did it feel to be sick at work, so to speak? So I did it then, and I have done it after that as well when we do new studies. So what we do is that we bring people in the morning, and you have this injection into the blood of these molecules, and then the white blood cells of the immune system out in the body, then they perceive this threat, right, as you express it. And then there is a signal to the brain. And then I would go, like in the example of me getting sick, oh, something is wrong. This is not that fun. And you feel this little feeling of being, yeah, fatigued, and you may feel some pain and a little bit depressed, or at least that your mood changes and you want to be still, etc. So that's the signature feelings of the sickness response, and I could observe that in myself. And I just add one thing there, and that is that it's exactly the same thing that happens when you have a sickness, when you have some kind of infectious disease, but also when you have an allergy or similar things, you have this response in the body. But for me, I knew that I was healthy. So it's a big difference as compared to when you're worried about your health. So for me, I felt bad, but in a very interesting way, informative way. So I had these feelings of the body not working properly, so to speak. But I knew that this was part of of a chance to learn about these mechanisms and eventually to help people that actually suffer from fatigue or from comorbid symptoms when they have whatever in the inflammatory disorders or something else.
Yeah, you can see the big difference between I'm thinking about people listening because they're going through things where they got all these symptoms, but they didn't know that whatever was going on in their body was fine, that it wasn't harming them. So in response to these symptoms, they're feeling fear and panic and worry, understandably, which can exacerbate things, as we know, versus you being like, the symptoms come up, everything's fine, which is the core of what we are understanding in this space is really important with what are terms, neuroplastic conditions, mind body conditions, is how you respond to those symptoms really matters. And it starts with understanding after you've got all the tests done and you know this to be true, that everything physically is okay and the symptoms are coming from somewhere else, which is fascinating to see that you just played this out for yourself in real time in your own body.
It really is. And I think this is also an opportunity to understand the importance of context and the interpretation, because
Mm.
I had all this knowledge about the immune system and the brain and what I at least thought would happen. But then I had this feeling being there, being a little bit weak and wanting to stay in this bed where I was, etc.
Mm.
But still, I knew that I would be healthy in a couple of hours because this is a few hours of sickness. I forgot to tell you
Right.
that. But then, when we have this model, we can actually use that to understand the importance of the interpretation, because we can inform people in different ways. We can study how they explain the symptoms, what thoughts they have. We can study the role of anxiety, because anxiety is
Mhm.
also a part of this response. But when you have symptoms of a disorder of some kind, or you think that you are sick and you worry about your health, you can't really let go of these feelings, because
Oh,
if you compare to me, I knew what was happening and I could let go. But if you have a drive that you need to act on the symptoms, like, oh, something is wrong, I need to see the doctor, I need to
yeah.
Google symptoms, or I am getting old, or whatever. All these thoughts is like drivers of behaviors. So you can't have this uh, comfort signal in the brain, which is actually can be generated in the brain. That part of the brain can kind of tell the rest, or the stress system that wires up, that okay, no, this is normal. You had a lot of exercise yesterday, or this is the model where you have an injection in your veins, or whatever. So it's actually an opportunity to understand the importance of the interpretation and anxiety and worry.
And it's so helpful to know that anxiety is part of the sickness response because we're asking people to go against what is automatically happening in their body. We're saying, don't worry about symptoms, but that worry, that fear, the anxiety, that's part of the response because it wants you to stop, pay attention, make this a priority, go get it fixed, rest, heal it, whatever it might be. And we're saying, just don't worry about these symptoms. They're
Right.
fine. And no wonder people are having such a challenging time with this. And it can be done, but it really normalizes and validates what a big ask this is for people and why that shift can take such a long time because it is an innate response to have fear and anxiety around symptoms when they come up. So yeah, it's
That's really
fascinating.
the point. So
Yeah.
what you say here connects then obviously to therapies where we try to unlearn
Mm.
or to have provocations of things happening in your body. So you feel pain or you feel breathlessness or something else or fatigue, and then you try to learn or relearn that this is not, it's like helpful signals. It's an alarm signal, but it's not something you need to act on, because if you act on them, that will actually deepen the neural the impact, or how much the brain wires in response to that. So relearning as part of therapies, as I know that you have discussed a lot in your wonderful, by the way, podcast, uh, is actually quite close to that. The what you do with this signal, because when you think of it, when people have like a shot of vaccine, you will, in many cases, feel this sickness behavior or sickness response. Maybe not
Mhm.
that strong, but it's well known that fear of the side effects is actually one driver against hesitance and skepticism against vaccines. But the response you feel is actually part of a body doing its work. You should have this sickness response, because that shows that you actually uh, activated something in the body that will build up resistance. So I think there's a lot of misinterpretation about the bodily signals. And once you have learned, so to speak, that they are dangerous, or that they are signals of serious structural damage or whatever it is, it's hard to unlearn then. It's easy for me to say that it's like healthy signals. It's
Mhm.
something completely different when you
Yeah.
suffer from it in a long time.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about vaccines. I love this example because I'm thinking about how my entire life I've had vaccines and I've always felt unwell for a period of time after a short period of time, but I come to expect it. And when it happens, I don't panic. Sort of like
Good.
going to the gym and being sore the next day. I knew it was coming. I know nothing's wrong. It's just a part of the process. But I think about things like the COVID pandemic, where everybody was scared and we didn't know what to expect. And these vaccines were brand new and there's a
I
lot of
know.
fear around it. So, and then we all go and get these vaccines and then we don't feel unwell, but we don't know if we can trust that or if it's going to go away. So, I could see how, in some cases where people have these lingering symptoms, it sounds like what you're saying, this could potentially be just that response to the sickness response to those symptoms. And then that fear around it can keep those symptoms going?
We think so, yes. So that's also one really interesting point you bring up there. But because we're not sure, but we think it's like this, and I think it's backed up by a lot of clinical experiences, that if you have the response and the sickness response, this low mood, etc., and the fatigue, this whole response, and if you start to worry too much, think about these symptoms and not feeling that it's like normal, that it's part of a healthy body doing its job, it seems that can actually prolong the symptoms or the circuitry that is behind sleeping less well. If you have this worry, you may worry in the evening. I mean, stress and worry it's not that, it's pretty good for your sleep actually, if it's in the day, because if the brain works, then it will sleep deeper actually. Uh,
Really?
yeah,
This
you
is
can
brand
measure.
new information to me.
I make a little extra now. I just put that in, and that is, if you measure neurons, single neurons or groups of neurons in the brain, and you make them work hard during the day by whatever you do with like exercises or thought, whatever it is, emotions, then they sleep deeper during night if you measure that like with physiological techniques. And that's a response to the work they had done. So in acute perspectives, stress is in this sense actually good for your sleep. It deepens sleep, but not if it's prolonged. it should not be in the evening. It's like if you do exercise in the evening, then you are jacked up, and you shouldn't be that. You shouldn't have a cortisol rise in the evening because it should go down, and then you should slow down, and then you should sleep. And this activation is not part of good sleep, so to speak. But in during daytime, etc., it's actually something good. Now you have to help me to bring me back to where I came from.
I need a moment to just take this in because
Thank
I've
you.
thought about this in terms of exercise, and I know that exercise in the morning is better. So and I know it's going to help me sleep better, but I never
Yeah,
like that stress on the body
yeah,
helps me sleep better. But that
yeah,
stress on the mind, if
yeah.
timed well, my shoulders just dropped because I'm thinking what a helpful insight this will be moving forward when I have stressful moments during the day. I'm like, I'm going to sleep well tonight.
And that's a wonderful feeling. And I think
Yes.
I remember where I came from when before talking about sleep, and that is like the what we think is a prolongation of the sickness response, which is not adaptive, because the acute phase is adaptive. You need to
Yeah.
save energy, right? When you're sick, that's why we feel all these changes when we get sick. You should feel fatigued, etc., because this is a signal that you should not use too much energy because the energy is needed by the immune system, right? So that's why we feel fatigued. That's what was successful for our forefathers.
So fatigue. Can you explain a little bit about fatigue? Because my whole life, and most of us, I believe, thought fatigue came from, I don't know, like a car that's out of gas. We think of it like the car isn't moving because the tank is empty. So if I'm feeling fatigue, something is wrong in my body, something is drained. I need to replenish it. The cause of the fatigue is that empty tank.
Yeah.
But the more I talk to people, I understand is fatigue is a bit of a unique symptom. So what is happening there?
It is really tricky, and I think that fatigue research is not as it's a little bit. It developed, I think, later than, for example, research about pain, where we have good models, etc. For a long time, we have not had that good models for to understand fatigue. But I think that's changing now, and there's a lot of interest, of course, in fatigue and why we have it. But what has become quite clear is that the equation for the brain to try to guess how much energy we have and how much energy we need in the future, it's really a hard thing. It's a computation, like a estimation or even guess by the brain. So if we for some reasons think that we will need much more energy than we have, then we can have a lot of fatigue feelings or also sleepiness without having a lack of resources. So that is probably why you can get stuck in these fatigued conditions where there is, as far as we can understand, no real deficit of energy. But the estimation by the brain is that we have too little energy, and then the energy will make us don't want to exercise, we don't want to socialize, we have this helpful signals when they are acute, but not helpful at all in the longer terms. We have this urge to be alone or to be still, in spite of having no deficit of energy. So it's a tough thing for the brain to have to see that trade-off between how much to use and how much you actually have or that you need to take in, how much energy you need to save and how much you can use. So that's a tough thing. And can I tell you just a thought example that I recently thought of, which is maybe too obvious? You can cut this out if you want to. But when you think of, well, for people, many of the audience of this channel have experienced that, and I understand that they really have these strong fatigue symptoms. And we can't really measure the deficit in energy levels in the body, but we have the very strong and very real, obviously real, fatigue feelings, right? So that's a miscalculation in some way, but you suffer from it because you can't really fight it. But if you think of when you have an eating disorder like anorexia, you can actually have feel that you have energy by not eating. So that is part of the problem when people stop to eat, that they will feel rewarded because they don't eat. And in spite of them having too little energy, eating too little, they can feel that they have energy, which is perhaps, I don't know, a way for organisms to survive. And when there is a starvation, you will still feel that you have energy, perhaps to get more food. I don't know, but clearly you can have these miscalculations in this hard equation between available energy and how much you need in the future.
It's such a helpful thing to understand because most of us think that the brain is constantly reacting. I don't
Yeah.
eat, it makes me tired. I have a very busy day, it responds with fatigue. But we've been talking more and more in this space, and I know you talk about this as well. So I'd love to hear how you understand this and explain this. But like we talk about predictive coding or predictive processing, about how the brain is actually functioning. So if you could talk a little bit about that, I think that would be really helpful.
I'd love to. So that's a very good connection you make there, because this is exactly where the prediction come in and the expectation. And because the use of energy is really central to survive for any organism, right? We have this, not only the estimation of much energy you have, but also the prediction. So that's where what we talk about here, right? The estimation. And we have learned in recent years that a lot of bodily symptoms and experiences in general that we have are related to the expectation. So we have a model of the world, including the body, and we have signals from the body which are matched then to the model that we have. And that's a more energy efficient way to act as compared to reading all the signals from the body and acting on them. It's better that we have a model and then we act on the model. If the signals are not too strange that come from the body, then we have like an error signal. So the estimation, the prediction, is part of a way to save energy. It's really good to work on a model. It's like automatic then. It's like, do you understand what I try to explain?
What you're explaining makes a lot of sense. And I recently heard it explained to think of your brain as an orchestra and it has different songs that it already knows and it plays all of the time. And to change those songs is like metabolically costly. Like it just wants to
Oh,
run the same program and it's from a prediction. Like we think this is going to happen. So we're going to play this song. And you can see how, when the brain is predicting most of the time versus reacting, that there's a lot of room for error, is what I understand it. It's
yeah.
going to make mistakes. It's going to predict things that don't happen, but the symptoms come anyway and are just as real as if the thing had happened. You know, we've got countless examples of phantom limbs and people thinking they stepped on nails and all of these things where pain shouldn't be present because they're actually fine, but the brain has made that prediction. And now here we
That's
are.
such a beautiful explanation. It's much better than what I tried to do. I think it's really nice with this orchestra metaphor with the melodies that it already knows, etc. So I think that's a really good explanation. And this has been coming into research about symptoms like fatigue and mood, etc. For some years, that it like changes in the body and the role of predictions in experiencing your body, in the way that your perception of the body is like an estimation. It's a little bit of a guess at what's happening and how you respond to that. So that's really on the point. And I think that in placebo nocebo research, that has been going on for quite a number of years actually. But much before that, this was actually shown in beautiful research about vision. So, for example, in classic examples by the Gestalt psychologist in the late 1800s, actually showed how we could perceive the world, the outside world, in a way that was heavily uh, influenced by predictions. You know, the illusions, the visual illusions that we can see. You can inform a person that a vague illustration would be shown, but you would prime the person that it would be a bird or a woman or something else. And then the person would be inclined to see what he or she expected to see. So hundreds or thousands of experiments in vision and in audition show this perfectly clear. So that was something we learned in late 1800s and in the 1900s and know a lot about now. So that's prediction. And we can see prediction errors and guesses and estimations. And later on, it was realized that this must be the same for the brain to understand the body. It uses a lot of information, and part of that is like guesses or what happened before.
So, what does this mean for the person who is listening, who is facing, they've been given a diagnosis such as long COVID or chronic fatigue syndrome or something in that umbrella? And they've had all the tests, and outside of some normal abnormalities in the body that don't seem to be something that could be causing this severity and wide range of symptoms, they're thinking, okay, so what do I do with this information? So what are they? Because I know you don't just. I saw you in another interview. Like, I don't just purposely make people sick. I also work to make them feel better. So what does the making them feel better part of this equation look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I try to tell that I make healthy people sick to make sick people healthy because that's we want to understand it. Of course, it's a lot of
Yeah.
basic research also that we just want to understand the human being and how the brain and the body works and these interfaces, so to speak. That is obviously a part of it, but we really want to understand why it can be dysregulated in such a way that it can when you have these long-standing fatigue conditions, or if you have the depressed mood that can be actually part of a immune response that goes on that is too strong or goes on too long. And I think what we do, for example, is that we try to look on immune responses and inflammatory activation in people that are sick, not only in inflammatory disorders, because that's quite natural, but we try to do it to see in if you have like part of the population, do people feel less healthy if they have more inflammatory activation, which is partly true. We try to see in inflammatory disorders how much of, for example, the depressed mood, like in severe allergies where you have this problem, or the anxiety, or you have the disorders like rheumatoid arthritis, etc., where you have many comorbid problems that are quite close to what we talk about with the fatigue, with the depressed mood, with pain sensitivity, etc., anxiety. So we try to use both this model that I talked about with healthy people and to study people who are actually suffering from a long-term disorder, and to see how much of the sickness response signature we can see in the people that are on the patient side, if I can express it like that. We also try to see if we can understand how prediction and interpretation changes your experience of being sick when we have this sickness model. You brought up the prediction, the predictive coding model. So now, for example, we have studies where we actually change the predictions people will have on in the way people will feel sick. And then we can study how much the prediction will change the experience of being sick, the sickness feeling, the anxiety. We have another study where we try to understand if the mindset will actually change the response both to vaccine but also to this inflammatory activation, the bacterial model that I talked about. Because that would make sense, because it's a little bit like when you think that the acute stress response is dangerous for you, it's basically helpful, which is an important message, I think. If you think that it's not helpful, people will perform less well in tests, and They will be more fear more the stress response and feel that, oh no, the body is starting again to be activated. Now I can't do this presentation or whatever it is as well as I could without the stress response. But teaching people that the stress response is healthy in the acute phase at least can help people deal with it better and use it as a source of energy. So we think it's similar for this immune response, that it's healthy. It's a signs of a healthy body doing what it should. You should feel, even if you don't enjoy it, you should feel fatigued for some time when you have a sickness response or a disorder, an infection. By trying to change the mindset of people, we think that we can change also the experience and also the inclination for vaccination, for example. We have seen before that part of the brain that is really interested in understanding bodily changes seems to be quite much related to how sick you feel and how anxious you are. We have some signs that predictions actually changes this sickness response also in a way that goes with this predictive coding model. So a lot of these things are hopefully translatable over to the more clinical side.
So, one of the reasons I was really excited to have you on the channel is that we have a lot of us in this space. I have a lot of guests on. We all use the same language. We have a similar understanding of things. I know I'm guilty sometimes of oversimplifying things. And my impression is that you do not do that, which I really respect. So, I'd love to hear your insights on this
Mm.
brain body connection, on how it works, on how it implicates health, any gaps, any things we're getting wrong, anything to add.
Yes, I think actually, I think from our side, like from researchers and clinicians, etc., we're guilty of presenting models that are not helpful enough. We have obviously not really been successful in providing a good integrated model that includes, so to speak, psychology within biology and speaking about symptoms or the cause of symptoms in a way that would not imply guilt or actually that you blame something or simplify it as being only in the brain, etc., dismissing people. So I think the failure of us actually presenting good models is really problematic. And it seems like we have a natural tendency to divide things into something more observable and something that we experience ourselves. Like it's a big difference between seeing something, seeing my coffee cup here and bringing it to my mouth, as compared to the feeling I have when I have the urge to drink some coffee. It's such a divide. And I think that this has been part of us having a natural tendency just to divide things into mental as compared to observable physical. But as we understand the world, there is no like separate dimension for the mental part. It's just part of our biology. It's fine that it's biology. It's like experiences that are produced in the brain and in the body. But we're used to speaking about it as if it was something that is either conscious and you use your free will to do some things that will cause a symptom, and then you have something else which is like biology and that you can't influence. And part of this way of speaking has caused that people with fatigue syndromes, not the least, have been dismissed. That it's not real, it's just in the head, it's somatoform, and all this really, I think, poor wordings of describing something that is real and that is understandable and perfectly natural, that you can dysregulate, the brain can dysregulate and not turn down pain signals, not turn down fatigue signals, etc. But you speak of it as it was like two dimensions, and obviously this is like mind-body dualism that we talk about here. So we're so used to it, and it's natural to some extent, and therefore we use expressions like consciousness can influence biology or thoughts can influence biology. But aren't thoughts not biology? I mean, most, I don't say that all people believe that, but I do. And they have an origin in the brain, and of course they can influence biology because they are biology. They're caused by neurons, and that can of course influence things in the body out on the outside, like white blood cells that we talked about, etc. So all this confusion, I think, has led to dividing something into psychiatry, and then it's a little bit people's own fault. It's the behavior that they choose to do that cause the problems. And then you have real disorders which are somatic. And here the problem of talking about things in an integrated way is really problematic. So therefore we need these models to help all people and clinicians and researchers to understand that these are only different levels of observation. It's not like different matter. It's not mind and matter. It's all its matter, but you view it from different points.
Yeah, I've been seeing lately how guilty I've been of this, and I still haven't figured out how to explain it in a different way. But we're working to make people feel safe in this space
Yeah.
because we know we have a dysregulated nervous system and brain, however you want to term it, and we're trying to turn off those alarm bells. So we're telling people nothing's wrong with you, it's just in your brain.
Yeah.
When you think about it,
Yeah.
it's just your whole control center of your body. Don't worry about it, you're fine.
Yeah.
Like, how confusing that is for people and dismissive. Like something is wrong because I can't go to work. I can't take care of my children. I feel horrible. I have
Right.
19 different symptoms. So, what is a better way that we could explain this to people?
I just want to share with you that I say things in a just similar way, even in podcasts where I have discussed
Yeah.
dualism and the power of language, etc. I can speak in ways like that imply that there is a real divide between something more mental and something more biological,
Yeah.
in spite of me trying to say that it's levels of observation. Sometimes it's really good to look on it from like a biological observation. Look on the neurotransmitter, look on the brain activation, look on the immune activation, or ask the person about their feelings and emotions and behaviors. It's just different levels of observation. It's really tricky. So I think I cannot really give you
The
the
perfect
key
answer
to
that
full
we're all
model.
looking for. Come on,
Sorry,
give me the
okay,
script. I want
but
to
I
know
think
what.
yeah, I think actually we can, because I think this for example, this psychoneuroimmunology uh, framework is helpful because it includes psychology, neuroscience, immunology, endocrinology, and often evolutionary biology, etc. So it's like a model where we always try to look on these different aspects. So I think that is helpful. I think some people have developed language which is helpful. And I like the way that John Stone and other people working with functional neurological disorders have used websites, etc., to try to explain things that is not telling people we don't know what it is. Rather, we recognize this. We see this
Mm.
often. This is like happening probably because this and that, but it's not that we don't see nothing. It's something, it's a positive, it's like a diagnosis where we acknowledge that we see something that is actually dysregulated. It's not like we don't know what it is. We did 1,000
Mm.
tests and now we don't know what it is. You should see a psychiatrist. So I think there are good ways actually to improve your language and then cause less blame and less shame. It's not your fault that you suffer. You
Yeah.
can't say that it's your fault.
Yeah. You didn't imagine it, create it in your mind, something that is make believe. I think
Yes.
listening to you where this breaks down or where we get this messaging is that the standard tests that we have available that most people get reveal that people are fine. So they're given this message that you are fine because most people aren't getting tests that are showing what's happening in the brain, which would be a lot more validating and helpful information if we could say, these organs are okay. Let's look at this. This is where it's happening and it's fixable.
I think like wordings like neuroplastic, like for example, neuroplastic pain, which is then based on observations that pain inhibitory systems in the brain are not as effective when you have, for example, an inflammatory activation, as we actually have shown, but also in conditions like fibromyalgia, etc. Viewing it from the brain side and the regulatory side uh, has been helpful, because that provides then an idea what can happen in the brain, which is not like your fault. It's not your thought. It's not, you're not depressed because you walk around and think that something happens. It may actually be part of things that you can't control, but they're still happening in the brain, and the communication, of course, with the body. And I think using neuroplastic, that term may be helpful for people also to understand fatigue. And I know you use it a lot. I think that relearning is helpful language. I think it's helpful to understand that you need to actually expose yourself, or the brain, or you, or whatever term we should use, not to be too dualistic, in a more practical sense, is what you need. Because if you have this tendency to be afraid of the pain, to stop walking or whatever, you need to really show and experience that you can do some walking, that it's not that dangerous with the pain, etc.
Mhm.
So in many therapies, this showing the brain what happens if you do something that you fear, that is of course exposure. And uh, often we have interoceptive exposure, and interoceptive then goes for bodily perception of the body. So you, for example, can, if you have health anxiety, you can take some, do some deep breathing, or run with on. You stand still, but you just run on the side, so to speak, on the side, so to speak, and then feel that the body responds. But then you can learn that it's not dangerous, and that can decrease health anxiety. Similar exercises decrease fear for uh, what that's called, arterial fibrillation. I can't really pronounce it in English. Like some cardiac disorders, we have cardiac symptoms that you fear. Uh, Symptoms of, like when you have an bowel disease, and symptoms, etc., can actually, this kind of exposure can actually make you relearn things that are helpful also for symptoms, not only classical psychological, so to speak, things like anxiety.
All of these insights I think are so helpful for people facing these conditions, and also validating for a population of people that feel largely dismissed. So I really appreciate all of this. And I have to say that your information is helping me in real time, because the lawnmowers,
Wow.
riding lawnmowers, have been going around me, and I'm muting it. And I know we'll minimize that noise in editing, but I'm getting really stressed. And then I had this thought, my shoulders just dropped. I'm like, I'm going to sleep better tonight.
Yeah. And you're like, yeah, I am not that
Mm,
stressed. It's later here, and I'm in Europe.
yeah. Oh,
but
yeah, it's
but
morning here,
I
so
feel
I'm
fine.
good. The
So you can
timing is
go,
perfect.
you stress on. My advice is that you can stress several more hours
I don't know if I
without
need to
suffering.
sleep that well. I'm okay. So what do you see in the future of medicine, in neuroscience and psychoneuroimmunology? How do you see things evolving and changing from here? Or is there more research underway that you're aware of? I'm very
You
excited
know
for the
what I
changes.
really would love, and that we try to slowly do at where I work at Stockholm University and Karolinska Institutet, is to combine the more experimental with the clinical side. Because,
Mm,
for example, at where I work at Karolinska Institutet, we have great therapists that do this internet-based therapies, and they do this with pain, they do this with IBS, they do this with fatigue, and etc., etc., etc.
yeah.
Okay, and then we have many experimentalists that are looking on mechanisms to learn how you learn, like social learning of anxiety or pain, or this predictive coding things, or the bacterial experiments that I talked about. and we haven't really integrated these two sides, because if we use people with diagnosis that are treated, we're bringing them into the lab and we do similar things with them. We can maybe understand the dysregulation. And what we learn in the lab with most often healthy people, if we bring out that to the clinic, doing research and doing implementation of things we learn from the lab, that's a real game changer, I think, because we are starting to do it a little bit, and it marries so well.
Mats, this is incredible. For people who are eating this up and want to learn more, like I am, I know that there are spaces and places they can do that. You have a wonderful book, so tell us about that.
Yeah, I have this book called The Inflamed Feeling, The Brain's Role in Immune Defense, on Oxford University Press, where I try to, in a little personal, or actually quite personal way, express my journey in this area. So I explain there about the predictive coding, like the examples about from the visual illusions, etc., and how the brain constructs the world, including the body. And I talk about the immune system and the sickness behavior, and also a little bit about how we avoid disease, like a behavioral defense to avoid getting sick in the first place by fearing people that may be sick or contagious, etc. So I have a lot of these perspectives covered in that book. So that's one way to go.
I am excited to read it. This is fascinating work. I just love what you're doing. I thank you for being here and helping bring some more understanding to this and validity to this. Because as I was telling you before, this type of information is still often dismissed when people first hear about it. So great to hear some of the science behind this. I'm going to link to my most recent interview with Dr. Howard Schubiner, who I know you recently met and spent some time with, who also does a great job of sharing the science and recovery strategies in really easily to digest ways. Thank you so much for being here. This has been absolutely incredible. I've loved every second of it. I have no doubt others have as well. I really appreciate what you're doing and you taking the time to speak with the audience here.
Thank you for the opportunity to actually talk about this and explain it in a way that may be helpful for the understanding and for the perspective of people suffering. That means everything for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.